Welcome to the Depth Dive. We take your source material and really pull out the key insights, the important nuggets. Our goal is simple: give you a shortcut to being well-informed, find those surprising facts, and help you connect the dots. Today, we're jumping into a pretty rapid-fire deep dive. We're looking at a collection of global headlines, specifically the top 10 from just the past 10 hours or so on July 23rd, 2025. It's quite a snapshot. It really shows how fast things move, doesn't it? And how interconnected everything is.
It really does. And our goal today, well, it isn't just to read off these headlines. We want to dig into the immediate ripple effects, and also those subtle undercurrents they create across markets, geopolitics, international relations. We're aiming to help you see that bigger picture that's often hiding behind the breaking news itself. Kind of distill the insights that can get lost in all the noise.
Okay, great. So let's unpack this. The major catalyst in our sources seems to be this U.S.-Japan agreement, right? Reducing auto tariffs from 25% down to 15%. That single event seems to have created quite the immediate ripple.
Oh, absolutely. What's fascinating really is just how immediate and widespread the positive reaction was. You saw European shares, specifically the STOXX 600, which is, a key index there, it surged 1.1%.
Wow, 1.1%.
Yeah, and heavily led by the automakers, as you'd expect. But it's more than just a number. It really signals this strong market confidence. People are thinking, maybe this deal paves the way for, similar agreements. Perhaps even with the EU. That would be huge.
Right, that makes sense. And this optimism, it obviously wasn't just stuck in Europe. How did the Asian markets take the news?
They rallied significantly, too. The Nikkei in Japan, for instance, jumped about 1.7%.
Okay.
And other regional markets saw broad gains as well. It was all really fueled by this optimism about easing tariffs.
Yeah.
It just shows how quickly positive trade news can, translate into investor confidence around the world.
But, okay, amidst all this positive market buzz, Japan's own central bank, the Bank of Japan, the BOJ, they sounded a bit cautious. What does that tell us, especially when inflation is actually picking up there?
Yeah, this is where it gets kind of nuanced. So despite inflation ticking up, the BOJ signaled caution about hiking rates. They specifically warned about economic uncertainty coming from, global trade policy generally.
Huh. So even with this deal.
Exactly. It suggests they're looking at a slow path for future rate increases, which might seem a bit counterintuitive at first glance. However, you also had Deputy Governor Yoshida expressing some optimism. He directly linked this U.S.-Japan deal to an improved economic outlook. And he even projected that their 2% inflation target could maybe be met by late fiscal 2026 or possibly 2027.
Okay.
So if you connect the dots, it shows that even a really positive trade deal like this doesn't completely erase a central bank's underlying worries about, long-term global stability. They're weighing the immediate good news against these lingering geopolitical risks. It's that classic central bank balancing act, really.
That's a great point, that tension between the sort of immediate market feeling and the central bank's more measured, maybe longer-term view. So how did this deal hit commodities? They often react pretty fast to these shifts in risk appetite.
Well, we saw Brent crude oil prices stabilize. They were near $68.57. And that's interesting because it actually paused a 3-day slide they were on.
Right.
So that stabilization suggests that the improved global sentiment from the trade deal is kind of balancing out those ongoing sanction pressures that were pushing prices down.
Okay, so a balancing act there, too.
Exactly. And then you look at gold, often seen as the safe haven, right? It dipped slightly down to around $3,423 an ounce. Now, that decline, it's small in absolute terms, but it's a pretty clear sign. It indicates market confidence is rising, so investors are maybe shifting away from those traditional safe havens towards more growth-focused investments. A subtle but significant signal of shifting risk appetite.
And there was also a very specific kind of high-profile announcement tied to this deal that grabbed headlines.
Yes, that's right. Trump revealed plans for a joint LNG liquefied natural gas venture up in Alaska with Japan. Now, it's important to mention, our sources point out that official confirmation for this specific venture is, still pending.
Ah, okay.
And that's a fascinating part of how headlines work now, isn't it? A big announcement can signal intent, grab attention, even if the actual formal agreements are still being worked out behind the scenes. It definitely hints at these strategic energy partnerships being built alongside the trade deals.
Okay, so let's pivot a bit now, moving from those economic ripples to maybe more strategic tides. Our sources also highlighted a pretty significant geopolitical development, these July storm naval drills launched by Russia. What can you tell us about these exercises? What kind of message might they be sending?
Well, this really raises that question about global power dynamics, doesn't it, and strategic signaling. The scale alone is immense. We're talking over 150 ships, 15,000 personnel, about 120 aircraft mobilized.
Wow, that's huge.
It is. And these aren't just in one place. These large-scale exercises are spread across key strategic waters: the Pacific, the Arctic, the Baltic, and the Caspian Seas. What's really striking is that geographical breadth. Doing drills simultaneously across such diverse and, frankly, strategically vital regions. It's a very clear demonstration of capability, isn't it? And a powerful signal of intent, perhaps aimed at, projecting influence or testing response capabilities globally.
A clear show of force, then.
A very clear show of force. It definitely demands attention from other major powers.
Okay, so from those very immediate, very dynamic headlines, let's maybe turn our attention to some more foundational shifts, things happening in international law and development. What's going on with the International Court of Justice on the climate front?
Right, so the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, is apparently set to issue an advisory opinion. It's influential, though technically non-binding, and it's about the responsibilities states have to prevent climate harm.
Non-binding. Okay, so what's the real weight of something like that?
Well, non-binding just means it's not like a direct court order in a specific dispute that must be followed immediately. But these opinions carry significant moral and legal weight within international law. They don't just get ignored. They end up shaping future legal arguments. They influence national policies. They sort of build the foundation for potential new treaties down the road. So it's less about immediate enforcement and more about, subtly but powerfully shaping the future direction of international environmental law.
Got it. So a slower burn, but potentially very significant over time.
Exactly.
And finally, let's touch on a major development in Africa, something related to economic growth and strategy in Nigeria.
Yes, the Nigerian Senate approved President Tinubu's plan for $21 billion in external borrowing. And what's really interesting here is the scope of what they intend to use these funds for. It's aimed at crucial infrastructure development, healthcare, education, and also reviving their rail development, their rail system.
So a pretty broad investment plan.
Very broad. This isn't just about taking on debt. It looks like a strategic bet on long-term economic growth for Nigeria. It reflects a pretty significant commitment to tackling some critical development needs and trying to unlock the country's huge potential. Though, of course, as always, the success really hinges on effective implementation and, transparency.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered a lot in a short span here. What does this all mean for you, our listener? In just this, half-day snapshot, we've seen how one trade agreement can just ripple across stock markets globally, impact commodity prices, and even influence the cautious thinking of a major central bank like the BOJ. We've also touched on these massive military exercises signaling strategic intent, moves in international law laying groundwork for future climate action, and these ambitious national economic plans.
It really does underscore just how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? And how events that might seem totally separate on the surface, well, they often influence each other in pretty surprising ways. From tariff cuts boosting European car makers all the way to a strategic military drill spanning multiple oceans. Every piece of news tells part of this larger, constantly evolving story. It really challenges us to look beyond just the single headline.
So thinking about all this, what stands out most to you listening in? Maybe it's that nuanced way the Bank of Japan is reading global optimism. Or maybe it's how those geopolitical maneuvers, those naval drills, demand attention, even when there's good economic news happening elsewhere. We'd encourage you to think about how quickly just one piece of news can reshape things, economically and politically, across the globe. And maybe consider what other hidden connections, what other layers you might find if you really dig into the information that's constantly flowing around us. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.